I never thought I'd end up here, writing about my own mistakes, trying to make sense of everything that happened. But maybe it's time I share what really happened, to understand why I did what I did. My name is Emily, and I've been married to Jason for over 10 years. He's a good guy, but lately, things just weren't the same between us. Jason is a typical middle-aged guy, working long hours, obsessed with his career. He's the kind of man who gets home late, eats dinner in front of the TV, and then falls asleep by 9:30 p.m. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel lonely, even when he was physically there. The thing is, I started feeling invisible. Jason and I hadn't been intimate for months, and the emotional distance was starting to feel unbearable. It was like we were roommates rather than husband and wife. I tried talking to him about it a few times, but he'd just brush it off, saying he was stressed or tired. I didn't feel like I was a priority anymore. It wasn't just the lack of physical connection. I started noticing that Jason wasn't really paying attention to me in any meaningful way. We barely talked about anything real anymore. He'd ask about my day, but it felt more like a routine than genuine curiosity. I started questioning myself. What was wrong with me? Was I not attractive enough? Was I boring? All these insecurities piled up, and I felt more and more disconnected from him. I wanted anything that would make me feel alive again. One night, I was scrolling through social media when I came across a post about a swinger party happening in the city. I don't know why it caught my attention, but something inside me stirred. Maybe it was the idea of doing something so out of character, of stepping into a world I knew nothing about. For the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of excitement. It felt like an opportunity to be someone else. I convinced myself that I was just going to check it out, to get a taste of something different, maybe a little thrill. It wasn't going to mean anything, just one night of fun. I didn't tell Jason about it. He would have just freaked out. Plus, I wasn't planning to do anything serious. I thought I could walk in and out without it affecting anything. So, that Saturday night, I dressed up in a way I hadn't in years. Something that made me feel attractive. I put on a dress I hadn't worn in ages, did my makeup a little more bold than usual, and even put on some heels. When I walked out the door, I felt like a different person. Someone young, exciting, and free. The party was held in an upscale, private venue. When I walked in, the atmosphere hit me immediately. It was an odd mix of excitement and tension. Everyone there doing their best to be friendly, but there was an underlying tension in the air. People were mingling, laughing, and talking. There was a vibe of curiosity and openness. That's when I met him. His name was Michael. He was a little younger than me, tall, and with a confidence that immediately attracted me. We talked for a while, just casual conversation at first. He was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. It didn't take long before the conversation turned more personal. I had a few drinks, and the boundaries between just chatting and something more started to blur. Michael was easy to talk to, and before I knew it, I was laughing and enjoying myself in a way I hadn't in ages. For the first time in months, I felt seen, really seen. I didn't plan to do anything more. I thought I was just there to have a good time, meet some new people, feel attractive for a few hours. But somehow, it turned into something I hadn't expected. Michael and I ended up spending the night talking and dancing. The more we spoke, the more I felt alive again. Like I wasn't just someone's wife, but a woman who could be desired. The night ended with me feeling conflicted. I didn't expect any of this, but there was this feeling of satisfaction, like I'd finally experienced something I'd been craving. I went home that night feeling both guilty and exhilarated. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that it was just a one-time thing. But deep down, I knew something inside me had shifted. I felt alive again. Seen, heard, and desired. It was something I hadn't felt in a long time. And that's when the guilt crept in. What had I just done? Was it just a game? Or had I crossed a line I couldn't come back from? As I crawled into bed next to Jason, who was already asleep, I couldn't help but wonder how long I could keep pretending everything was fine. How long could I hide the fact that I was no longer satisfied with the life we had built together? I didn't know yet. But one thing was for sure, I couldn't go back to being the woman I was before that night. Something inside me had changed. I woke up the next morning, feeling like I was in some kind of surreal dream. I could still feel the rush from the night before, the way Michael had made me feel alive and noticed, something that had been missing for so long. The guilt gnawed at me, but there was also this strange sense of satisfaction. It wasn't just about the attention. I realized, in a way that was hard to admit, that I hadn't felt this way in ages. I tried to push the thoughts away. After all, it was just one night, right? I convinced myself that I was simply indulging in a harmless bit of fun. But that nagging feeling wouldn't go away. I couldn't stop thinking about Michael. We exchanged messages the next day. It was subtle at first. Just casual conversation, nothing serious. He asked how I was doing, how I felt after the party. I told him I was okay, still processing everything. I didn't tell Jason about the message exchange, of course. He was always busy with work, so it wasn't like I was hiding something outrageous. It was just a little harmless chat. But the more we talked, the more the line between just talking and something else started to blur. It was strange. Talking to Michael felt different from anything I had experienced in a long time. His messages were lighthearted, funny, and flirty. It was nothing intense at first, but something about it felt easy. It made me feel good. Over the next few days, we exchanged more messages. He complimented me on my dress from the party, said he couldn't stop thinking about how we danced together. I found myself looking forward to our chats. I had never really felt like this with Jason. Not this level of excitement, not this sense of anticipation. Every time I looked at my phone, I hoped there would be a message from Michael. And when there was, my heart raced a little. I told myself it was innocent, just conversation, a harmless distraction from the monotony of my life. But then, one evening, Michael asked if I wanted to meet up again. This time, he suggested we go for a drink. I wasn't sure what to say. I wanted to back out, but a part of me, some part I didn't want to admit to myself, wanted to go. I hadn't felt this way in so long. So I agreed. I told Jason I was going out with friends. It wasn't exactly a lie, though I didn't mention where or with whom. I told myself that it was just one more time, just to see how things would go. I thought I could keep it under control, keep things casual. But the moment I saw Michael again, I knew I was in too deep. We went for drinks at a quiet bar. Michael was even more charming than I remembered. He listened intently, making me feel like I was the only one in the room. The conversation flowed effortlessly, and before I knew it, hours had passed. There was no awkwardness, no tension. Just the two of us, enjoying each other's company. I could feel the chemistry between us growing stronger, and the pull was undeniable. At the end of the night, we walked out together, and Michael leaned in to kiss me. It wasn't a sudden thing, but it felt inevitable. I kissed him back, and for that brief moment, I forgot about everything. About Jason, about the guilt, about everything that had gotten me here. I didn't expect things to escalate like this. I really didn't. But somehow, it felt like it was out of my hands. It wasn't just about feeling attractive again. It was about feeling seen in a way I hadn't in years. Michael didn't look at me like I was just someone's wife. He looked at me like I was someone worth paying attention to. We ended up at his place that night. I'm not proud of what happened, but I wasn't sure how to stop it either. Everything felt so fast, but also so right in the moment. The more time I spent with Michael, the more I realized I was falling for him, even though I was telling myself it was just a fling. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. But by the time I left his apartment the next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in too deep. I told myself that it was just one more mistake, one more lapse in judgment. But deep down I knew I couldn't stop. I wanted him. More than I wanted to admit. When I got home, Jason was already asleep. He didn't even stir when I slipped into bed beside him. And as I lay there, guilt overwhelmed me. I knew what I had done. I knew how wrong it was. But at the same time, there was this small part of me that was no longer ashamed. I didn't feel like I was just someone's wife anymore. I was someone worth desiring. But that feeling didn't last long. The more time passed, the more conflicted I became. I hated that Jason and I were drifting apart, but I also hated that I had let myself become so entangled in this situation with Michael. I wasn't sure what to do. I tried to distance myself from him, but that only made me crave the attention even more. I told myself I'd cut things off, that I didn't need this in my life. But every time Michael texted me, I found myself replying. It was like I couldn't help it. And the more I kept talking to him, the more I felt disconnected from Jason. I didn't know what I was doing anymore. I just knew that I couldn't stop. I kept telling myself it would all be fine, that it was just a phase, a temporary distraction. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I was losing myself in a relationship that wasn't real, and I was getting closer and closer to a point of no return. It wasn't long before I could feel things spiraling out of control. The guilt started eating at me, but there was something else too, this strange tension in the air whenever Jason and I were in the same room. I don't know how to explain it, but it felt like he was noticing something, even if he wasn't saying anything. Maybe he was just getting quieter, more withdrawn, or maybe I was projecting my own guilt onto him. Either way, I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew. He had to know, right? Then one evening, I came home late from another meeting with Michael. I had told Jason I was out with some girlfriends, and he had barely reacted. But when I stepped through the door, something was different. The house was too quiet, and Jason was sitting in the living room, staring at the TV, but not really watching it. The whole atmosphere felt tense, like we were on the edge of something. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual, like nothing was wrong. He didn't look at me immediately. There was a long pause before he finally turned his head, his eyes cold and focused. "You had a good time?" he asked, his voice flat, almost like he already knew the answer. "Yeah. Just a few drinks with some friends," I replied, not meeting his gaze. I hated how nervous I sounded. Is that all it was? His voice was softer now, but it carried an edge, like he was testing me. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't lie to him, not completely. But I couldn't tell him the truth either. The words stuck in my throat. Jason stood up and walked toward me, his expression unreadable. "I know what you've been up to, Emily." My heart dropped. I froze. For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. The silence between us felt suffocating. "You think I wouldn't notice?" He was still calm, but I could hear the anger simmering beneath the surface. "I saw you at that party. The one you went to without telling me. I saw you talking to him too." I didn't even try to deny it. My stomach churned, and a rush of panic spread through me. I thought I was being so careful, but I should have known better. He always noticed when something was off. "I wasn't doing anything, Jason," I tried to say, but my voice trembled. "It was just a party. I was having some fun, that's all. It didn't mean anything." "Fun," he repeated, his voice rising slightly. "Is that what you call it? You're telling me you didn't mean anything by it, but I'm supposed to believe that. I saw how you were with him. I saw the way you looked at him." His words hit harder than I expected. He wasn't angry in the way I thought he would be. Loud and yelling. But his disappointment was far worse. I could see it in his eyes, feel it in the air between us. The realization that Jason knew everything, that he had been watching, following me, felt like a punch to the gut. "You don't get it, Jason," I said, my voice quieter now, almost pleading. "I needed this. I needed to feel wanted again. I needed to feel like I mattered. You weren't there for me. I've been trying to tell you for months, but you weren't listening." Jason's eyes darkened, and he shook his head slowly, almost as if he couldn't believe what I was saying. "I didn't know you were that unhappy, Emily. I really didn't. But that's no excuse. You didn't have to do this. You didn't have to hurt me this way." His words hit me harder than anything. I could see the pain in his eyes, and it made my heart ache in a way I hadn't expected. I had done this to him, and I couldn't take it back. "You don't understand," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I wasn't trying to hurt you. I just wanted to feel like myself again. By sleeping with someone else," he spat. "By lying to me over and over again. You think that makes you feel better? You think that fixes things?" I shook my head, tears starting to well up in my eyes. "No, I don't think it fixes anything. I don't even know why I did it. But you weren't there for me, Jason. You haven't been for so long." There was a long pause, and for a moment, it felt like time stopped. Jason just stared at me, as if processing everything. The weight of the silence was unbearable. Finally, he spoke again, his voice eerily calm. "I can't do this anymore, Emily. I can't live with someone who doesn't respect me, who lies to me every chance she gets. I don't want this. I don't want a marriage built on lies." I stood there frozen, my hands trembling. I could feel the coldness in the room, the distance that had suddenly appeared between us. Jason had never sounded so distant. I had never heard him speak to me like that. "I want you to leave, Emily," he said, his voice firm. "I can't stay with you. I can't forgive this." I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. This wasn't how I imagined it. I thought we'd work through things. Talk it out, maybe even take some time to fix what was broken. But this was the end. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know what to say to make it better. So, I said nothing. I just stood there, my chest tightening, my heart sinking further and further. Jason turned away from me, his back to me now, and I knew there was nothing left to say. He was done. And I had done this to us. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at Jason's back, before I finally turned around and left the room. I went to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and just froze. The weight of everything hit me all at once. I couldn't believe this was happening. I had broken my marriage. I had broken something that, until recently, had been everything to me. Jason was my partner, my best friend. We had built a life together, and now I had destroyed it all with my own hands. The days that followed were a blur of silence. Jason and I barely spoke. He moved into the guest room, and the coldness between us was suffocating. I stayed in our bed, but it felt like a different world now. A world where everything I had done was wrong, where every action, every decision I had made led to this moment. Jason filed for divorce within a week. I didn't fight him on it. How could I? I knew I had no right to. What could I say? He was right. I had broken his trust. I had betrayed him, and I didn't deserve to try and salvage what we had. I spent the next few weeks bouncing between numbness and deep regret. I couldn't stop thinking about how Jason had looked at me when he realized everything, like he didn't even know who I was anymore. The pain in his eyes still haunts me. It was a pain I knew I had caused, and yet, it was the hardest thing I had ever had to witness. I tried to focus on myself, to figure out where everything had gone wrong, but the truth was, I didn't know how I got here. How had I let myself spiral into this? How had I let a momentary feeling of excitement with Michael destroy the trust I had built with Jason over years? One evening, I found myself alone, scrolling through old photos on my phone. Pictures of Jason and me when we were happy, when we were in love. I couldn't stop looking at them. Every smile, every trip we took, every anniversary we celebrated. I could see the love in our eyes, and I hated myself for losing it all. But as much as I wanted to fix things, I knew it was too late. Jason had made his decision, and I couldn't change it. I had betrayed his trust in a way that I couldn't undo. All the excuses, all the reasons I had told myself, it didn't matter now. I had to face the consequences. I reached out to Michael a few times after that night, but he was distant. He had his own life, his own relationship. I didn't want to be with him, not like that. But I couldn't shake the way he had made me feel, the way I felt alive again. Still, as much as I tried to hold on to those feelings, I knew deep down that it wasn't real. It was a fantasy, something I had created in my mind because I couldn't face the reality of my failing marriage. In the end, Michael and I stopped talking altogether. I wasn't ready to face him, not after everything that had happened. I couldn't hold on to that illusion any longer. Now, as the days passed, I started to process everything. I realized how much I had taken for granted in my marriage. Jason had always been there for me, even when I wasn't there for him. But somewhere along the way, I had stopped appreciating him. I had stopped appreciating what we had. I was so focused on my own insecurities, my own need for validation, that I didn't even see the man I loved right in front of me. And now, it was too late. I don't know what Jason's going through now. I'm sure he's angry, hurt, maybe even relieved that we're no longer together. I imagine he's focusing on his work, on moving forward with his life. I can't blame him. I wouldn't want to be with someone like me either. But for me, this is something I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. I'll carry the guilt, the regret, and the realization that I destroyed everything I had with Jason over a fleeting moment of excitement, a desperate need to feel wanted. It's easy to blame him, to point fingers and say that he didn't pay attention to me, that he didn't listen to my needs. But the truth is, I didn't communicate. I didn't fight for us. I just let myself fall into someone else's arms, someone who didn't even mean anything in the long run. And now, Jason is gone. Our marriage is gone. And the worst part is, I did it all to myself. I'm not proud of what I did. I don't even recognize the person I was in that moment. But I've learned one of the hardest lessons of my life. Be careful what you wish for, because the things you do in the moment can tear your whole world apart. I can't undo what I've done, and I can't expect Jason to forgive me. But I can only hope that, someday, I'll be able to forgive myself.